Is the dream of Pashtunistan still alive on both sides of the border? What do Pashtuns really want? We were talking that they may want to dismantle the Durand line, but for what? Yeah, maybe they did not dismantle the Durand line. The ISI did, as you think.
Well, first of all, Pashtuns don't all want the same thing, and Pashtuns in Afghanistan have been living with a different history, different political system, different experience than Pashtuns in Pakistan. Pashtuns living in the tribal agencies of Pakistan have a very different experience than Pashtuns living in Peshawar, or the settled parts, what they call the settled parts of Pakistan that are subject to Pakistani law. In Pakistan, in the Pashtun areas, the elections were won by the Pashtun nationalists last time. But the Pashtun nationalists, interestingly, are not demanding Pashtunistan now. Actually, the Pashtun nationalists support the Afghan government and the international effort in Afghanistan, and they're very much against the Taliban. When you talk to the Taliban, or people connected to the Taliban, one time I asked a former Taliban official who is no longer active with them, who's living in Afghanistan, in Kabul, about Taliban's relations with Pakistan. He said, Pakistan is the worst enemy of the Taliban. I said, why? He said, because we're the only people who can destroy the Durand Line. The Durand Line is the internationally recognized border between Afghanistan and Pakistan, but Afghanistan has never recognized that as an international border. It was a border that was drawn by the British. And Pakistan doesn't administer all of its territory up to the Durand Line. It's got the federally administered tribal areas, which it rules indirectly, and the tribes have a kind of autonomy in that area. And actually, Pakistan has used those federally administered tribal areas where it has a kind of deniability because it doesn't administer them directly, as a staging ground for covert action. They've trained people to fight in Kashmir there. Of course, they train people to fight against the Soviet Union in Afghanistan there, and that's where many of the Taliban and Al-Qaeda bases are now located as well. So they play a role in Pakistan's security doctrine, actually. Now, currently, there's a huge sort of blowback effect in that those militant groups that the Pakistan military nurtured as part of its security doctrine are now destabilizing Pakistan, and they're fighting. They may have killed Benazir Bhutto. When I was in Peshawar just about 6 weeks ago, actually they blew up the electric pylon and reduced the supply of electricity to the city by about 30% one night. Which is something the Taliban have not done to Kabul.
Exactly.
But they did it to Peshawar. So I think what I see is that the people, there's a common thread among Pashtuns that they refuse to be divided by the Durand Line. Now, that can mean different things. For the Pashtun nationalists in Pakistan, what it means is they want to integrate the tribal agencies, they want an open border with Afghanistan, and they want Pakistan to be at peace with Afghanistan and no Taliban activities and so on. For Taliban and other militants, what they say is that they actually have effectively abolished the Durand Line. They operate on both sides without any problem. But that's not because they want to build a Pashtunistan or a Pashtun state. It's they want to build an Islamic emirate. What they say is Islam doesn't recognize borders. They don't say we Pashtuns want our own state, because if you say we Pashtuns want our own state, that's recognizing borders. It's just moving them somewhere else. So it's actually, although in both cases they have some quarrel with the borders, it's actually a very different kind of movement.
Guessing game a little bit. Is Osama bin Laden in South Waziristan, according to your sources or your information?
Well, I don't have any sources that tell me where he is. I talk to people who claim sometimes to have some information, although not very good information, about where he might be. Most of what I have heard indicates that he's north of there. He's in North Waziristan or Bajar, or even further, or the northern areas, somewhere further north. Or he might be...
Yeah, they were saying that it could be in near Chitral.
Yeah, going back and forth between Chitral, Kunar, Nuristan. But
it's like nobody. It's like in Hollywood. Nobody really knows.
Well, he does.
Exactly.
He does.
That's the most important
You can't say
part.
nobody does. But,
the Pentagon's secret plot that was apparently uncovered, that they want to snatch bin Laden again. They had a similar plot before 9/11, and Musharraf blocked it. So apparently now there is another Pentagon secret plot to go South Waziristan, North Waziristan, or Chitral and snatch bin Laden alive.
well, I think what you're referring to is there was a plan I think according to press reports, in late 2005 for a fairly large cross-border special forces operation in Pakistan, perhaps to catch bin Laden or Zawahiri. It's not clear from the reports exactly what the target was. And what happened is sort of the military bureaucracy, according to the press reports anyway, took its own path, and as they developed it, of course, it became, first they have a small unit to go in, then they think they have to protect the small unit, then they have to protect the unit that's protecting the small unit. And by the time you finish all of that, it's quite a large invasion force, and they decided that it was too big a force. And they
but there have been rumors in Washington of another secret plan. This is for before Bush leaves office. This is a new one.
Well, the one thing I've heard, I haven't heard anything so concrete as a plan, but I've heard that there's a kind of intelligence and special operations surge, and that they would very much like to capture bin Laden before the election. I heard this from people in the intelligence agencies of the United States who were not very happy about being used as part of an electoral campaign, but they still were willing to try to capture the leaders of Al-Qaeda.